I'm aware that some of you may not have gone to bed from last night, and yeah, you're nodding, I see that. Others, I know, have been preparing for this day from the moment that you've arrived on campus. And for everybody, this is the culmination of years of hard work and dedication, of long nights and challenging projects, of getting it done, and of focus, and a desire to complete meaningful work. Today, you are surrounded by those people who love and support you, the people who got you here, let's be honest, your sisters and your brothers and your parents and your grandparents, all whose sacrifice and belief in you constantly has helped you achieve. And to the parents here today, congratulations to you. You are looking down, I know, on this sea of graduates, and even though they're grown people, they're still your baby, right? About to fly out onto the next thing, the real world, real jobs. I have 4 kids, and so I know exactly what the anticipation of this moment is like. So let me lay your fears to rest. They're not leaving, and I don't mean that metaphorically, like literally, they're not leaving. They're independent, and they will move back into your homes with you, if not this year, in the next year or the year after that for sure. Especially if they're going into journalism. When I left home, when I left home, I left home for college, my parents the next day, knocked down the wall of my bedroom. I had no bedroom to come back to, and I moved home twice, still with no bedroom. So, please, let me put to rest any fears that they're actually leaving you. To the graduates, today is bittersweet. I can see you taking in this moment, campus, your friends, your experiences. This is really where you've grown up intellectually, where you've developed deep and meaningful friendships and bonds. And maybe today you're a little bit worried that you're going to lose what's become a very important connection in your life. Your graduation means saying goodbye to all that you know. Well, please let me put those fears to rest too. This place of higher learning will be part of your life forever. The Alumni Association will hunt you down and find you. You might be doing work for the Peace Corps in the remote part of the globe. They'll be on your phone. Hey, do you want to pay your dues? Now, since you know this is graduation, here's how it's supposed to work. I'll be up here giving you some advice. You guys can dutifully nod your heads. But actually, I really don't give advice. Many years ago, Woman's Magazine asked me what was the best advice I ever got from my mom. It was going to be a Mother's Day special, and we would be featured in a full half-page kind of ad in the magazine. And I thought, uh-oh, because my mom was not like a sweet, cute mom. My mom was like a tough nut immigrant mom. And I said, I think that's a really bad idea. But the editor insisted. She said, listen, we want to do something. What was the best advice your mom ever gave you? And the picture will be like the two of you hugging. And I said, okay, so my mother's best advice was, most people are idiots. The editor's like, so I'll call you back. Click. Never heard from her again. But it was true. It was really good advice. And I think what she was saying was that most people are idiots, so you might be a bigger idiot if you listen to them all the time. Because you will be told in many varied ways all the things that you cannot do, that you should not do, that you will absolutely, positively fail if you try to do. And so please, I'm begging, don't listen. Most people are idiots, and they just don't know. They're speaking from fear. And as you head out into the world, you need to be fearless. Problems can be solved. This is always the way it's been and it'll always be is not an answer. Nuance and discussion can be inserted back into our most critical conversations. People who say otherwise, they're wrong. My parents were role models in not listening. They spent much of their lives ignoring people's bad advice. My mom and dad were immigrants to this country. They came to America to pursue their education. My mom was black and from Cuba, and my dad was white and from Australia. And they came to the United States at the very moment when interracial relationships and relations in America were very tense and very hostile, the late 1950s. They met because they both attended daily mass. My dad, and of course, any story that begins with people meeting because they attend daily mass, the takeaway is you should attend daily mass, in case you're wondering. My mom didn't have a car, so she would walk to church. Well, my dad had a car, and so he would drive, and he would basically hit on my mom going to church. I can't really clean that up. That's just what happened. He used to ask her every single day, would you like a ride? And she would say, no, thank you, because he'd pull over his car every single day. He'd have to want, no power windows, people. So you have to lean in and commit. No, thank you. Day after day, no, thank you, no, thank you. One day she said yes, she would like a ride, and they made a date to go on a date, but because it was Baltimore in the late 1950s, 1958, no one would serve them on their date. They'd say to my dad, who was white, you can come in. They'd say to my mom, who's black, you cannot come in. And so after being turned away from place after place after place, eventually, my mother said to my father, come back to my apartment, and she was an amazing cook, and she whipped him up an incredible meal, Cuban food. She was a great cook. And her entire point, as she would share the story with me and my sisters, and sometimes my brothers, but mostly my sisters, was not about injustice or policies that were unfair or even discrimination. It was, girls, if you can cook, you could get a man. I can't cook, but I like to say I can't make it, but I can make it happen within 20 minutes, more or less. When my parents decided that they would get married at the end of 1958, interracial marriage was illegal in Maryland and 16 other states, and so they drove to Washington, D.C., and they got hitched, and they drove back to Baltimore and lived illegally as a married couple. And when their friends said, whatever you do, don't have children, because biracial children will never fit in this world, I'm number 5 of 6. My parents were terrible listeners every step of the way. And they knew they were on the right side of history. And by 1967, the very year my little brother was born, my parents' 6th child, that was the year the Supreme Court would overturn the ban on interracial marriage. Their illegal marriage was now legal. And they had 6 kids. My mom used to say, if you wait for everyone to get with what you're doing, you might be waiting a long time. And when I'd ask my mom, so what was it like in the early 1960s when my 2 sisters were born, she said, people used to spit on us as we walked down the street. And I said to her, oh my God, what did you do? And she said, this thing that I think shaped how I thought about journalism and all the work that I did. She said, Lovey, because she called me Lovey, we knew America was better than that. And I always liked that answer, right? Because it meant you had to commit to being part of making something better. You didn't really get to opt out, that you were part of something. We knew it could be better than that. And so they focused on those things that needed work in this country to make it better. So when you are told you can't solve this, do it anyway. And when you're told you won't make progress on this issue, show them that you will. When I sat where you sat, I wanted to know all the details. Will I have a good job? Will I have a career? Will I be passionate about that career? Will I be successful? But I actually think those are the wrong questions. Yes, yes to all of that, yes. But I think a better question is, and a better question that will lead you to a great career and lead you to great passion and lead you to great success is, will I contribute to helping my fellow man? Because I think that ultimately is what matters. And not everybody can say that their education has prepared them for making those critical contributions, but you can. So I don't think it's advice that you need, except for maybe don't listen to stupid advice. But do seek to listen to others to really hear them. And the media is not always the best translators of other people's stories. Try to hear people, especially in this environment where we all live in our little information bubbles, and try to listen. I've tried to make a career out of it, and it has been rewarding. Because I think when you really seek to listen and understand where people are coming from, you can in turn make a great impact. And remember, even as you calculate student loan debt and maybe starter home debt, your real debt is to the people near you, your fellow man. And you are better prepared than anyone to repay that debt, because it's with facts and data and evidence that we need to undergird the search to understand each other, our differences and our similarities, to make the world better for all of us. I started in television news at a time when cable networks were just getting started, and one of my first jobs in TV news was to carry the phone. I carried the cell phone. It was the size of a cinder block, and it was just about as heavy. And that was what the evening news was. We worked on the evening news and local news, and pretty much every story that mattered, everyone would wait till 6 p.m. to cover it. Education stories were considered soft. They were assigned only to women. Stories about childcare were considered to be less weighty and important. Today, news breaks all day, every day, and we grapple with education policy, and we haven't really solved the problem of finding good childcare for working parents. Today, social media allows us to funnel only the stories and the perspectives that we care about. And elected officials often choose to have live shots in the halls of Congress before actually working with their fellow elected officials, with whom they may not agree, to hammer out the contentious, unpleasant, difficult issues of the day. And so I think that's why we are, to some degree, where we are today. People lack faith in some major institutions, media, government, because they feel like maybe we're not serving them, and at a time when truth itself is under attack. Today, we chase stories and chase eyeballs and don't always dig in and camp out and tell those stories that deserve to be told. Every day we shout at each other, but it's been my experience that regardless of someone's beliefs, under a firmly held position, even with made-up stories, people all want the same things, and they are these things: better and safer communities, schools that serve their kids, opportunities for good jobs, a chance to be heard. And when the country's divided among partisan lines, at times we still share those things and those values. And I think that's where we have to start. But you'll never figure out that conversation if you don't listen. And if you focus on problems and not solutions, if you focus on the litany of differences and not, okay, where's the common ground? Well, you'll have a really snarky Snapchat, and that's about it. You won't solve any problems. I became a reporter because I wanted to tell stories about people, and then I realized kind of fast that the best way to do that was to let them tell their own stories. I wanted to ask tough questions and understand their lives and their perspectives, and my job was not about interviewing famous people and political pundits. I feel like there are enough of those on TV. It's to understand people's lives and choices and dreams and hopes and fears. We sometimes seem to forget that. And when I started reporting documentaries like Black in America and Latino in America and Muslim in America, giving the microphone to undercovered communities was groundbreaking. We did a documentary on coal miners in West Virginia and female rescue workers at Ground Zero, documentaries on New Orleans and Katrina and Haiti, and we looked at urban schools and rural schools and found that they have a lot in common. We found coal miners who wanted to build solar farms and conservative Republicans and liberal Democrats who were able to meet in the middle and build consensus. It wasn't as unusual as you might think if you watch the news sometimes. And so I've tried in my work to reveal more about America, the voices ignored or misunderstood, to give people perspective. And if we start understanding that our dream doesn't have to always be at odds with someone else's dream, I think we can recognize that we're part of a greater whole, a dream to stand for something and believe in something that's bigger. America is better than that, my mom said. The best thing about my job, and I think the best thing about your careers, will ultimately be using your research, your work, your exploration to literally make the world better by asking those difficult and challenging questions, by standing up for the truth, by inserting data back into the national discourse. It is not enough to just do the work. You have to share the work and create narratives and reach that broader public. You have to make your research matter, just not to academics only, but to everyone, everyday people who are at the heart of every single thing you dig into. You have a tremendous opportunity in the jobs and the paths that you choose. And my best and most important stories have always come from people whose names you would never remember, because they're stories of the American dream. And regardless of your next steps you're taking, you can work to understand where people are. To make a life, not just a living, I think requires learning what it really means to be responsible to others. And if you're cynical, I think that's just lazy. I think it's much harder to be thoughtful and compassionate and work for solutions. What will make you good at your job is to show up and do the work. And what will make you great at your job will be to do all those things you will never get paid for, to infuse what you do every single day with humanity and authenticity and honesty and fearlessness and compassion. I know we don't talk about those things a lot. We often don't even celebrate those things in people anymore, but I think really those are the things that make you great. And generally speaking, I hate when speakers throw out quotes in their remarks. It was the great Teddy Roosevelt who once said. But there is one quote that is worth remembering and worth contemplating. And it's from Dante, so of course, it's killer. He said this: "There's nothing worse than doing nothing and saying nothing when your voice is needed." There's nothing worse. The hottest places in hell are reserved for those who in times of great moral crisis maintain their neutrality. There's nothing worse than doing nothing and saying nothing when your voice that's been educated and exposed and tested and challenged and understands the importance of all that's in front of you. Your voice is needed. And as you head out into the world to pursue jobs and more education and life, never forget that our purpose really, ultimately, is to serve. Thank you, and congratulations, the class of 2019.